October 14th, 1985. A female state trooper pulls over a red pickup truck on a quiet highway in rural Kentucky. At 6:22 p.m. Her radio logs the stop. She gives her location, and then nothing. She never checks back in. She never calls for help. Within 20 minutes, her car is found still running on the side of the road. Her hat is on the seat. Her gun is in the holster. But she is gone. For the next 15 years, her case haunts the state. No body, no clues, no suspects. But in the year 2000, a junkyard worker calls 911 after cracking open a car that had been sitting there for years. Inside, he finds something twisted, buried deep in the crushed metal. It's a police uniform. And it still has a badge on it. It was October 14th, 1985. Trooper Rachel Quinn walked into the Kentucky State Police Station just before 4 p.m. She smiled, nodded at the desk sergeant, and grabbed a cup of coffee like she always did. Rachel was 29. She was known for being brave, smart, and kind. Other officers liked working with her. She'd been with the force for 3 years. That day, Rachel was assigned a solo patrol. She didn't mind. It was a quiet highway shift. Nothing big ever happened out there. As she grabbed her gear, one officer joked, "Don't forget to bring back donuts." She laughed, tossed her bag in the car, and gave a quick wave as she backed out of the lot. No one knew it would be the last time they'd see her. Rachel drove off toward Highway 62. Her radio was on. Her badge was shining. Everything seemed normal. Around 6:20 p.m., Rachel was patrolling near mile marker 47 on Highway 62. It was still light out. Cars were few and far between. The road stretched long and empty. Then Rachel saw something. A red pickup truck pulled off onto the shoulder. The driver wasn't speeding. No lights were broken. But something about it made her look twice. At 6:22 p.m., Rachel grabbed her radio and called it in. "Dispatch, this is Unit 5 to 7. I'm making a traffic stop. Red pickup, Highway 62, near mile marker 47. The dispatcher answered, asking if she needed backup. "Negative," Rachel replied calmly. "Seems routine." That was the last thing anyone ever heard from her. 2 minutes passed. Then 5. Then 10. No check-in. No follow-up call. Just silence. The dispatcher tried calling her back. No answer. Officers nearby were alerted. Within minutes, something felt wrong. Very wrong. At 6:40 p.m., a truck driver named Jeff Weller was heading west down Highway 62. He noticed flashing lights up ahead. As he got closer, he saw a police car pulled off on the shoulder. The headlights were still on. The engine was running. Jeff slowed down. He looked around. No officer. No other car. He pulled over and waited. Maybe she was helping someone in the woods or checking something. But after a few minutes, no one came back. He stepped out of his truck and called out, "Officer? Everything okay?" Silence. He walked up to the cruiser. The driver's door was open. The engine hummed. Radio crackled quietly. No sign of Rachel. Jeff backed away and used the radio in the patrol car to call for help. His voice shook. "This is truck driver Jeff Weller. I found a police car on 62. No officer inside. Cars still running." Within minutes, multiple units were racing toward the scene. When officers arrived, they searched the cruiser first. Rachel's hat was on the front seat. Her purse was in the passenger footwell. Her radio was still working, and her gun was in its holster, untouched. There were no signs of a fight. No blood, no broken glass. The driver's door was open, but nothing seemed out of place. It was like she had stepped out and vanished. Officers looked in the trunk. Nothing. They called out into the woods. No sound came back. Her flashlight was still clipped to the seat. Her notebook sat on the dash. Everything she needed was still there. Except for her. The worst part? Her patrol log showed she'd only been stopped for a few minutes before she disappeared. Whatever happened fast. And whoever was behind it was already gone. The moment officers realized Rachel was gone, everything changed. They called it in. Trooper missing. Possible abduction. Within minutes, police cruisers lined both sides of Highway 62. Officers fanned out into the nearby woods, fields, and ditches. They weren't just looking. They were racing against time. Helicopters buzzed overhead, using heat sensors to scan the tree line. Search dogs were brought in. Troopers shouted her name into the trees. No one answered. Some searched the road for tire marks. Others checked under bridges and behind guardrails. Nothing. No blood. No footprints. Not even a broken branch. Rachel's squad car still sat there, engine humming, untouched. But it felt like something horrible had happened right there. And no one had seen it. Dispatch called neighboring counties. Border checkpoints were alerted. Flyers were printed before midnight. The message was clear. One of their own was gone. And they were going to find her. By 9 p.m. Something had settled into the minds of every officer on that highway. Rachel Quinn hadn't walked off. She hadn't wandered away. She had been taken in full uniform while doing her job. It was hard to process. This didn't happen. Not here. Not to her. Her badge, her weapon, her radio, all left behind. Whoever did this didn't take her gear. They took her. And they did it fast. There was no struggle. No scream. No call for help. It was like someone reached into that quiet roadside and pulled her out of the world. That thought changed everything. This wasn't just a missing person. This was an attack on one of their own. And they weren't going home until they found out who did it. As darkness took over the highway, the searchlights came on. Dozens of officers moved through the trees with flashlights, shoulder to shoulder. Radios clicked and buzzed with updates, but they were all the same. Nothing found. Dogs barked at shadows. Helicopter blades chopped the air overhead. A cold wind moved through the leaves, making every branch sound like footsteps. But there was no Rachel. Some troopers refused to stop. They walked deeper into the woods, hoping to hear something, anything, a sound, a voice, a clue. Others just stood still and stared at the trees, not sure where to go next. By midnight, the fear had fully set in. Not just for Rachel, but for all of them, because if this could happen to her, it could happen to any of them, and no one had any idea who or what they were up against. By the next morning, the news had spread. Trooper Rachel Quinn was missing. The town of Ashwick, normally quiet and slow, suddenly felt frozen. Shops didn't open. The post office stayed locked. School buses never showed up. Even the diner, which never closed, turned its lights off. People left work. Farmers stepped off tractors. Teenagers stopped playing video games and started printing flyers. Everyone wanted to help. By noon, a group of nearly 200 people stood near mile marker 47. Teachers, parents, teenagers, all ready to search. Officers passed out radios and maps. They split everyone into teams. Some people checked the woods. Others walked along dirt roads. A few searched under bridges and inside barns. Every 10 minutes, someone yelled her name. No one answered. Rachel wasn't just a trooper. She'd grown up here. Everyone knew her face. She went to the same high school, ate at the same restaurants. She was one of them. And now she was gone. No one knew what to do. But they couldn't just stand around. So they searched. And kept searching. Over the next 2 days, the search got bigger. More troopers were sent in from nearby counties. Some wore tactical gear. Others had rifles. Every one of them had the same goal: Find Rachel. They walked shoulder to shoulder through the woods. Thick trees, deep brush, wet ground. No one cared. They kept going. Helicopters hovered above, scanning for heat. Drones zipped through the trees. Police dogs sniffed along the trails, barking at broken branches and old footprints. At one point, they found a torn glove. Everyone stopped. But it wasn't Rachel's. Searchers climbed hills, crossed streams, and pushed through sticker bush. Still, nothing. They checked rivers, ponds, and abandoned sheds. They used infrared, thermal cameras, ground-penetrating radar. No signs of life. No signs of death. By the end of the second night, one officer said quietly, "It's like she just vanished." No one said anything back, because deep down, they were all starting to feel the same thing. Crime scene investigators worked all around Rachel's patrol car. They checked the steering wheel, the door handles, the trunk. They swabbed for fingerprints, scanned for footprints, searched the car inch by inch. They found nothing. No blood, no broken glass, no signs of a fight. Her seatbelt was unbuckled. Her door was shut. Her gun still in the holster. It was as if Rachel had stepped out for a second and then disappeared. They reviewed her last radio call over and over. Her voice sounded calm, normal, no stress, no fear. Security footage from a gas station 5 miles away showed nothing unusual. No red pickup. No strange cars. There wasn't a suspect. There wasn't a direction. There wasn't a single clue. It was the kind of case officers hated most. Because there was nothing to go on. After a few days, something else started spreading through town. Rumors. At first, they were quiet. Then louder. People asked, what if Rachel ran off? What if she wasn't taken? Why would someone leave without a struggle? Some wondered if she had a secret, a double life, a reason to disappear. One local said she saw Rachel crying 2 weeks earlier. Another claimed she heard yelling outside Rachel's house. None of it was confirmed, but the stories kept spreading. The police didn't like it. Her family hated it. They knew Rachel. She wouldn't just leave. She wouldn't hide. But facts were facts. There were no signs of a crime. And when there's no evidence, people start filling the silence with stories. Even if they're wrong. On the 5th day, Rachel's mother stepped in front of a microphone. The press conference was held outside the sheriff's department. Dozens of reporters stood behind cameras. Locals gathered on the sidewalk. Everyone knew this wasn't going to be easy. Rachel's mom, Martha Quinn, wore the same clothes she'd been wearing for days, a worn flannel shirt and jeans. Her eyes were swollen. Her hands shook. She looked directly into the camera. "If you have." She said, voice cracking. "Please, just bring her back." Her hands gripped the podium. "She's my baby. She was out there to help people. She didn't deserve this. Please." There was silence. No camera clicks. No murmurs. Then she added something no one expected. "I forgive you. I don't care why you took her. I just want her home." Afterward, reporters wept. One officer had to walk away. It wasn't just a mother begging. It was a community being torn in two. That night, the press ran the footage nationwide. Thousands watched it. And one of them, out in the hills of eastern Kentucky, picked up the phone. The call came into the tip line just before midnight. Man didn't give his name, but his voice was calm, confident, and heavy with guilt. "I didn't think much of it before," he said, "but I saw something weird the night the trooper went missing." He told them he was a farmer. Lives 10 miles east of mile marker 47. On the night Rachel vanished, he had been checking on his livestock when he saw headlights moving fast across the back fields. A red pickup truck. No lights. Kicking up dirt and weaving between trees like it didn't want to be seen. He assumed it was a poacher. or a drunk kid. But now, after seeing Rachel's mom on TV, he couldn't stop thinking about it. He gave the officers a rough time, a rough direction. Said it disappeared behind a ridge near the old coal trail. Then he hung up. Officers were dispatched within the hour. 2 cruisers, 1 unmarked SUV. After 5 days of nothing, they had their first real lead, and they weren't going to waste it. They hit the area just after 2 a.m. It was a stretch of backcountry where roads turned to gravel and gravel turned to grass. Locals called it Ridge 9. No lights, no signals, just pine trees, deep woods, and dirt trails barely wide enough for a 4-wheeler. They followed tire tracks for nearly a mile before losing them in the brush. Then, silence. No. Red truck. Red. No oil stains. No cigarette butts. No footprints. Nothing. For 2 hours, officers searched the ridge, sweeping with flashlights and drone cams. They scanned tree bark for scratches, checked tree roots for signs of fresh mud. Still, nothing. When the sun came up, they expanded the perimeter. Nearby residents were questioned. Game cams were pulled from fence posts. No truck, no suspect, no photos, no plate number. The only thing they confirmed was this: someone had driven through there fast, someone who didn't want to be seen, and someone who hadn't been back since by noon. The red pickup had joined the long list of ghosts in Rachel Quinn's case. Just another lead, just another dead end. Months passed since the search ended with no answers. Back in their home, Rachel's room stayed frozen in time. Her bed was made just as she left it. Pink sheets, folded blanket, 2 pillows arranged neatly. In the closet, her Kentucky State Police uniform hung untouched. Her boots sat by the door, shining under the lamp. A toothbrush stood in a cup beside the sink, untouched since October 1985. A framed photo of Rachel, smiling, perched on the dresser next to a stack of books she never finished. No one dared move a single item. Her parents tiptoed around the room like visitors in a museum. Dust began to settle on the corners of the ceiling. A thin layer covered her desk. It held her patrol notes, a pencil, and a map she planned to study. Even her favorite hat rested on a hook by the door. Outside her door, the house moved on. Voices. In the kitchen, a clock ticking in the hall. But inside that room, time stood still. It felt like Rachel might walk back through the door any moment. No one moved anything ever again. As time passed, Emily Quinn stopped going to college. She used her savings to stay home and care for her family. She cooked breakfast each morning, made sandwiches for her father, and helped her mother answer the phone when tips came in. Emily cleaned the house from top to bottom every day, never letting dust settle on Rachel's things. She felt guilty for leaving, so she stayed and kept the hope alive. Neighbors said they saw her walking the roads near mile marker 47, calling her sister's name. She talked to search teams and passed out flyers almost every week. At school, her friends moved on without her. She stopped attending classes and withdrew from campus life. Emily traded her textbooks for maps. She believed that if she stayed close, Rachel might return home. And so she stayed, day after day, trapped in her grief until it became her life. Tom Quinn was once a strong man, a local sheriff's deputy. Now he could hardly speak. Each morning, he sat at the kitchen table staring at a photo of his daughter. His coffee went cold. He wore the same work shirt every day, hanging loose on his thin shoulders. When neighbors visited, he nodded but said nothing. His voice was gone. At night, he walked through Rachel's room, stopping at her uniform, touching the badge carefully. He knelt by her bed and whispered her name into the silent air. No answer came. His wife would find him in the study, tears in his eyes, looking. At search maps, he could not read. The man who once led search teams now could not find words to pray. His heart had broken where words once lived. Even after years, the house echoed with his silence. That strong man left when Rachel did. Holidays became painful reminders of what was gone. On Thanksgiving, the family set an extra plate at the table, folded napkin, and empty chair waiting for Rachel. At Christmas, lights were hung, but a stocking stayed empty on the mantel. Presents were wrapped under the tree with one tag that read, "For Rachel." Birthdays passed with a single candle on. A small cake left untouched. Friends dropped by with cards. They said, "Happy birthday, Rachel," in somber voices. Rachel's mom stood in the doorway, staring at the empty seat. Her dad cleared dishes in silence. Even the family dog waited by the door, expecting her to come home. Year after year, the house filled with decorations and then with a deeper ache. When each holiday ended, the Quinn family learned to smile through tears. But every celebration felt incomplete without Rachel there to share it. They waited for her return. Every October, like clockwork, her face returned to the screen. It started with a simple idea. A segment on the 6 o'clock news to mark the anniversary. A soft-spoken anchor named Kelly Pierce had covered Rachel's disappearance back in 1985. She never forgot it. So each year, on the same day, the news ran a short tribute, just 2 minutes. A photo of Rachel smiling in uniform, a clip from her academy graduation, a moment from her mother's first public plea. Then Kelly would look into the camera and say, "Rachel Quinn has now been missing for 1 year, 2 years, 5 years. By 1989, it became something people expected. Families gathered to watch. Neighbors left candles on their porches. Schools showed it in classrooms. It was quiet, respectful, solemn, but most of all, it kept Rachel's name alive. Her parents never missed it. They sat together in the living room, holding hands, eyes locked on the screen. For 2 minutes, the silence in the house broke. Rachel was back. Her voice, her smile, her presence. Then the screen faded to black. The program moved on. But her parents didn't. The phone never stopped ringing. Sometimes it was late at night, a whisper on the other end. "I think I saw her in Nashville." Or, "A woman at a rest stop looked just like her." Other times it came from the heart. Strangers who swore they had visions or dreams. Psychics, drifters, prison inmates hoping for a deal. Each time, police followed up. And each time, it led nowhere. Flyers were faxed, questions asked, surveillance footage pulled, but the red pickup never showed up again. And Rachel, if she had been out there, left no trace. Her family clung to each new call like it was a life raft. Emily marked everyone on the calendar. Her father kept a notebook beside the phone, logging the date, time, and what was said. Hope is stubborn, even when it hurts you. By 1990, Rachel's story had faded from headlines. New crimes took over the evening news. New faces replaced hers on missing posters. In coffee shops and grocery lines, her name was rarely mentioned. But inside the Quinn house, nothing changed. Her uniform still hung in the closet. Her toothbrush still sat by the sink. The calendar still stopped at October 18th, 1985, the day she vanished. Emily, now in her late 20s, stayed in town. She never dated, never moved out. Her world had frozen around her sister's absence. Her parents aged quickly. Her mother's hair turned gray almost overnight. Her father's voice, once strong, now cracked when he said her name. Every year, they watched the road outside their home. Every red truck that passed made their hearts race. They still believed, not because they had proof, but because it was the only thing left to hold on to. People said, "You have to let go." But letting go felt like betrayal. So they waited. And watched. And wondered if somewhere, out in the hills of Kentucky, the truck was still out there, hiding the truth. At the far edge of town, behind a chain-link fence and rows of broken appliances, there's a junkyard. It's not the kind of place most people notice. Overgrown weeds, cracked pavement, the smell of oil and rust in the air. Inside, hundreds of old cars sit in rows. Some have doors missing. Some don't even have engines. They've been here for years, baking in the sun, collecting dust and spiderwebs. But way in the back, near the trees, almost out of sight, sits one car that's different. A red pickup truck. Its paint is faded. The tires are flat, but it looks almost untouched. Like it drove in and never drove out. No one has touched it. No one even noticed it. It just sat there. Silent. For years. Until one day, someone finally took a second look, and everything changed. When the junkyard owner checked the truck's tag, he frowned. There was no name. No VIN that matched any system. No record of it ever being towed in. That was strange. Every car in the yard had a paper trail. Insurance claims, DMV reports, towing slips. But not this one. The truck wasn't on any list. No one had ever paid for it. No one had ever claimed it. The keys weren't in the ignition. The plates were gone. The glove box was empty. It was like it just appeared. But that didn't make sense. Vehicles don't just show up. Maybe it was dropped off illegally. Maybe someone dumped it and drove away. That happens sometimes, especially at night. Still, it felt off. The truck was too well hidden, tucked behind two taller vehicles, far from the main lot. It had been there for over 10 years. And somehow, in all that time, no one ever tried to move it. It became part of the background. Just another rusting machine, until the owner hired a new guy. A kid fresh out of high school. And that kid was about to start his first day. On a hot morning in June, the new worker showed up at the junkyard. His name was Tyler. He was 19, tall, quiet, and just happy to have a summer job. The owner handed him a clipboard and pointed to the back row. Start there. Prep him for the crusher. Tyler nodded. He didn't ask questions. His job was simple. Check each car, make sure it was empty, and mark it for processing. He walked past rows of old sedans and broken vans. Flies buzzed. The sun burned. Then he saw it. The red pickup. It didn't look like the others. No spray. Paint marks, no busted windows. It just looked still. He opened the driver's side. It creaked. Dust flew up. Nothing inside. No bags, no trash, no paperwork. He leaned over to check the passenger side. That's when he noticed something strange. There was something blue, barely sticking out from under the seat. Tyler paused, bent down, reached for it. He thought it was just a piece of fabric, but what he was about to find would stop the entire yard. Tyler pulled on the fabric gently. It didn't come loose. So he reached deeper under the seat and gave it a firm tug. It slid out, slow and stiff, like it had been wedged there for a long time. In his hand was a piece of faded blue cloth. At first, he thought it was a towel, or maybe an old shirt, but then he saw the stitching. A patch, a name tag, faded letters, Quinn. His heart stopped. He didn't know who that was, but he knew this wasn't normal. He stepped back from the truck, looked around. Called for his boss. The owner walked over, annoyed, until he saw what Tyler was holding. His face changed. He didn't speak. He just stared at the name on the cloth. Something about it felt wrong. Very wrong. They called the sheriff. And by that afternoon, everything in the junkyard had changed. Tyler turned the blue cloth over in his hands. It wasn't just fabric. It was a shirt. A full button-up, stiff from age, but clearly a uniform. A Kentucky State Police uniform. Pinned to the chest was a metal badge. Dulled by time, but still clear. State Trooper. Tyler stared at it. His hands started to shake. This shirt didn't belong in some junk truck. It belonged to an officer. And this officer didn't just forget it here. He stepped back and opened the truck door wider. On the floor, under the seat, he saw a dark stain on the carpet. Old, faded, but still there. He didn't need to be a detective to know something was wrong. He looked at the badge again. Then the patch on the sleeve. It all matched. This was real, not trash, not junk. It was evidence. Maybe even the key to something big. He walked backwards slowly, clutching the shirt in both hands. Then he spotted the small metal nameplate, still clipped above the pocket, and when he read the name on it, his breath caught in his throat. The nameplate said, R. Quinn. Tyler stood still. He'd heard that name before, on TV, years ago. Trooper Rachel Quinn, the officer who vanished in 1985. The woman they never found. He didn't know the full story, just bits and pieces, but he remembered her face, her uniform, the news clips, this shirt. It was hers. He felt a chill run down his spine. This wasn't just some old uniform. This was the first real piece of Rachel Quinn anyone had seen in 15 years, and it had been sitting in the junkyard this whole time, hidden in plain sight. Tyler turned and ran to the office. He told the manager, "Call 911 right now." The owner didn't ask why. He saw Tyler's face, pale, scared. He picked up the phone and made the call. Within minutes, help was already on the way. The case that had once gone cold was no longer cold. The first patrol car pulled in fast. Then came the second, then a third. Soon, the entire junkyard was lit up with red and blue. Troopers jumped out. Radios crackled. Hands on holsters. Tyler pointed them to the truck. One officer stepped inside the cab, flashlight in hand. He saw the torn carpet, the blood stain, the missing panel near the floor. Another officer carefully took the shirt, placed it in an evidence bag. When the badge was confirmed, everything stopped. The radio traffic changed. The name, Rachel Quinn, echoed through the static. Detectives were called. Crime scene tape went up. No one was allowed near the truck. The yard was locked down. After all these years, they had something, a real clue, a real place, a real truck. They didn't know where Rachel Quinn was, but now they knew where she had been. And for the first time in 15 years, they had a trail. By the time the sun came up, the junkyard didn't look like a junkyard anymore. It looked like a crime scene. Troopers, detectives, crime techs. They filled a lot. Their boots crunched on gravel. Radios crackled. Commands were short and fast. Yellow tape stretched across the rusted fences. The old red pickup sat in the middle, untouched. Guarded. Officers stood in a wide circle around it. No one was allowed near without gloves and clearance. Flashing lights from patrol. Cars lit up the twisted rows of scrap metal. Red, blue, red, blue. The air was heavy, silent, like everyone knew what was coming. But no one wanted to say it. The old truck that had sat forgotten for so long was now the center of everything. The whole force had one goal: find out what was hidden inside. And figure out what really happened to Trooper Rachel Quinn. The forensics team got to work. Carefully, slowly. They didn't want to miss anything. First, they removed the doors, both rusted shut. It took tools and time. Then the roof. Then the seats, cut from the bolts and peeled out. Everything was bagged, photographed, logged. Under the passenger seat, they found a hair, long brown. Under the floor mat, a tiny plastic button. Inside the back wall of the cab, stuffed behind a loose panel, they found something strange. A woman's leather belt. It was small, slim, still buckled. But what made the techs freeze was the back of the cab, crushed flat, twisted like a soda can. It looked like something had been trapped inside when the truck had been towed in. Maybe years ago, one tech reached into the tight space and pulled out a clump of fabric, faded blue dot, same color as Rachel Quinn's last uniform. Everyone stepped back. No one said a word, because deep in the metal folds, something else was still there. A shape. Rounded, bone dash colored. Not junk. Not tools. Something human. And now, it was finally coming out. The medical examiner took over. Piece by piece, they worked through the wreckage. They found a small shoe first. Black leather, still mostly whole. Just one, right size for a woman. Next to it, the remains of a sock. Then came the bones, a spine, a hip, fingers, all crushed and scattered inside the truck's twisted cab. It wasn't a full skeleton. Some parts were missing, maybe destroyed when the truck was crushed. But there was enough to know. Enough to be sure. Under the seat, near the floorboard, they found a small silver earring. Round, with a tiny sapphire in the center. Rachel's mom had described it 15 years ago. Rachel never went on duty without them. One officer opened the folder. Inside was the photo. Rachel in uniform, smiling, wearing the earrings. It matched. Everyone went quiet. No more guessing. No more questions. This was her. Trooper Rachel Quinn had been found. Not in the woods. Not in a field. She'd been here the whole time, trapped inside a red truck, in the back of a junkyard. And now, they had to find out how she died. They kept digging. Inside the truck's doorframe, an officer noticed something strange. He leaned closer, then called it in. Scratches. Tiny, deep grooves carved into the inside of the door. The metal was worn, but the marks were still there, wild, scattered, uneven. Someone had clawed at the door. With fingers, with nails. Then they found more, inside the glove box, on the back of the seat, under the dashboard. She hadn't been killed right away. She'd been locked in. Left there, buried, under junk. While still alive, she'd tried to escape, scratched, kicked, fought, and no one heard her. She died alone, in her uniform, in the dark, in the heat, trapped inside that red truck. 15 years passed. People drove by the junkyard every day. No one knew. Until now. This wasn't an accident. This wasn't random. Someone had put her there, locked the doors. Then walked away. And now the police had a new question. Who drove that red truck? And who wanted Rachel Quinn to disappear? Investigators ran the VIN number etched on the truck's rusted dashboard. It led to a faded title from 1985, registered at a small used car lot outside Louisville. The truck had been sold just 4 weeks before Trooper Rachel Quinn disappeared. They tracked down the lot's old records. Most had been shredded, but one yellowed folder remained. Inside was a handwritten sales slip. The buyer listed D. Weller. Cash deal. No trade-in. But the listed phone number didn't exist. The address? An abandoned house that had burned down years ago. D. Weller wasn't real. The signature didn't match anyone in DMV databases or arrest records. No criminal history. No driver's license. Nothing. But the paper showed one thing clearly. Someone deliberately bought that truck right before Rachel vanished, using a fake identity. This wasn't random. Whoever Weller was, they'd planned something. And now, police had their first thread to pull in 15 years. The junkyard's records showed something chilling. That same red pickup had been towed in back in 1988. 3 years after Rachel went missing. It was flagged for crushing, but the machine jammed mid-process. The truck was shoved aside and forgotten. It sat there, crumpled, locked, with Rachel's body still inside. No one checked. No one knew. The keys were missing. The cab was sealed. She'd been hidden by pure accident. And because the crusher broke that day, she was preserved. If the machine hadn't failed, there'd be no trace of her left. Detectives went through every name connected to the junkyard. Old employees, tow drivers, managers, anyone who might have touched that truck. One name kept coming up: Earl Jennings. He worked at the yard in the late 80s. Quiet guy. Kept to himself. Left the job in 1989. No forwarding address. When officers tracked him down, they found him living 2 counties over in a trailer off a gravel road. They brought him in. At first, he said nothing. Then he folded. Earl admitted. He remembered the red truck. Said it came in late one night. No paperwork. Just dropped off. But the man who brought it in wasn't the usual driver. He was tall, wore gloves, gave no name, paid cash. Earl said he never asked questions. Didn't want to get involved, he told them. But when police pressed harder, Earl said something else. He remembered the man looking nervous. Kept checking the back of the truck. Kept his hand on the door handle like something might jump out. That detail hit hard, because now it sounded like Rachel might have still been alive. When she was dropped off, who was that man? And why did Earl keep quiet all these years? Detectives knew the red pickup didn't just appear out of nowhere. Someone had to sell it. So they went back to where it might have started, a used car lot, just off Highway 62, the same lot that was there in 1985. It had changed names and owners, but the building was the same. And inside, the basement still held old boxes of paperwork. Most of the files were ruined by time, mold, dust, water damage. But one cardboard box in the back was still sealed shut. Inside, a folder marked April-June 1985. A detective flipped through the pages. Mostly names, signatures, sales slips. Nothing stood out. Then something did. A handwritten form, purchase number 611. No printed receipt. Just a name, a rough address, and the words 1983 Chevy, red. Paid cash. There was no photo. No ID. Just the buyer's name. But it wasn't clear. Ink had faded. The address was wrong. Still, this was the closest they had. One last name at the bottom looked promising. A salesman had signed off on the deal. He was old now, retired, living in the next town over. Detectives made the call. He answered on the second ring. The retired salesman met them in his garage. He was 83 now, slow to walk, but sharp. He said he remembered the truck. Guy came in, paid in cash. No small talk. Wore dark glasses, even indoors. The salesman didn't know his name, but he did something unusual back then. He kept Polaroids of buyers with the vehicles. Said it was for lot records. He dug into an old coffee tin and pulled out a stack of faded photos. They were curled, yellow. Some barely visible. One photo stopped them cold. A red Chevy pickup. Parked near the fence, standing beside it. A tall man with long dark hair. Wore a flannel shirt. Face blurry. But something about the posture felt off. The salesman flipped it over. On the back, written in faded blue pen, Tommy J. Cray, April 18th, 1985. Detectives froze. This was it. A real name. A face. Even if blurry. Sale date. Everything was finally connecting. They ran the name through the system, and what came back made everyone stop. Tommy Cray wasn't just a buyer. He had a record. A long one. Tommy J. Cray wasn't. From anywhere, he floated from state to state. Always on the move. He worked odd jobs. Construction. Junk removal. Car detail. Never stayed long. Arrested 5 times between 1980 and 1986. Petty theft. Trespassing. Assault. 1 charge of attempted kidnapping that never stuck. But the most chilling detail? He once worked for the same junkyard where the red pickup was found. Only for 2 weeks. But it put him there. Same location. Same timeline. When detectives pulled his last known address, they found it was in the woods of northern Arkansas. A cabin. Secluded. Property was under his cousin's name. Paid for in cash. Neighbors barely saw him. Said he'd vanish for weeks and suddenly show up with firewood or groceries. Always alone. No family. No friends. Just a man in the woods, off the grid. Rachel's name was never mentioned in his file. But now, all eyes were on Tommy, and they were about to knock on his door. A team of officers rolled in at dawn. No sirens. No lights. Just silence and the sound of tires crunching gravel. They reached the cabin at 6:47 a.m. One trooper stayed behind with binoculars. Watched the front door. No movement. The rest moved in. Guns drawn. They knocked once. No answer. Knocked again. Then, the door creaked open. Tommy stood there, shirtless, confused. Gray hair, rough beard, eyes bloodshot. He didn't run. He didn't speak. He just looked at the officers and raised his hands. Inside, the cabin was small. One room. Bed, fridge, wood stove. No phone. No internet. On a shelf above the stove, police found something strange. A photo. Frame. It was of a car. A red Chevy. Pickup. Same model. Same truck. Tommy didn't deny it. He said he liked the truck. Said he used to own one like it. That's all. But something in his tone made the lead detective pause. They searched the place top to bottom. And what they found buried under the floorboards would finally explain everything. Inside the cabin, while officers stood silently in the room, Tommy turned toward the lead detective and said something no one expected. "I knew you'd come." She fought like hell. His voice was flat. No fear. No emotion. Just a tired man saying something he'd carried too long. The room went silent. One officer instinctively reached for his cuffs, but the detective held up a hand. Tommy didn't resist. He sat down on the edge of his bed and looked at the floor. He didn't explain much, not yet. But those first words were enough. They weren't guessing anymore. They weren't chasing shadows. This man knew Rachel, and he just admitted to something terrible. Outside, the team called for backup. Inside, the truth was finally starting to break through. This wasn't just an old missing person case anymore. It was now a confirmed homicide. The red pickup had already been pulled from the junkyard and preserved. Detectives searched every inch, and what they found changed everything. Tiny strands of hair under the seat. Aha! Trace of blood on the passenger side floor mat. Blue fabric fibers, the same color as Rachel's police uniform. It took weeks, but the lab results came back. DNA, a match. Rachel Porter. There was no mistake. Rachel had been inside that truck. She bled inside that truck. Even after all those years, time hadn't erased the truth. The evidence was old, but not gone. And now, they had the final piece. Tommy J. Cray wasn't just a suspect. He was now directly tied to the scene. The truck. The uniform. The woman who vanished in 1985. No more doubts. The case was real. The loss was real. And Rachel had finally been found, even if it was too late. The courtroom was quiet on the first day. Rachel's mother sat in the front row, clutching a photo of her daughter in uniform. Her sister sat beside her, fingers trembling. Eyes locked on the defense table. Tommy walked in wearing a prison jumpsuit, shackled, expressionless. He didn't look at the Burnett family, didn't speak, didn't flinch. The prosecutor laid out everything. The photo, the DNA, the confession, piece by piece. The jury saw the story. How Rachel left for patrol and never came home. How her car was found miles away, engine still warm. How Tommy bought the red truck with cash just weeks before she disappeared. How the vehicle was hidden at the back of a junkyard for years. And how Rachel's blood was still inside. Tommy's lawyer tried to argue it was circumstantial, that the confession wasn't clear, but the jury saw through it. The family watched in silence. They had waited 15 long years for this moment. Now they were watching justice unfold. Slowly, painfully. One truth at a time. Tommy didn't cry. He didn't apologize. But when the judge asked him why Rachel, he finally spoke. She was a cop. He said, "I hated cops." He claimed it wasn't planned. Said he saw her alone, pulled over on the shoulder. He stopped, got out, walked up with a smile. Then it all went dark. "She fought like hell," he repeated. He didn't say her name. Not once. Didn't call her a person, just the cop. To him, she was a symbol. Not someone's daughter. Not someone's sister. Just a badge. And he wanted it gone. The jury took less than 4 hours. Guilty. First-degree murder. The courtroom was quiet as the judge read the sentence. Life without parole. Rachel's sister grabbed their mom's hand. Tears streamed down their cheeks. The reporters outside had already started writing headlines. But inside, the family wasn't thinking about justice. They were thinking about Rachel, her laugh. Her silly habits, her dream of making detective. Now, a name was finally cleared. No more whispers. No more rumors. She didn't run away. She didn't leave her post. She was taken. And now, after 15 long years, the truth was finally spoken. Out loud. It was the funeral Rachel never got. A cold March morning. Clouds overhead. The town stood still. Troopers in full uniform lined both sides of the church steps, shoulder to shoulder. The American flag hung low. Rachel's coffin, draped in red, white, and blue, was carried by 6 female officers. All of them wore their hats low, faces tight, eyes full. Bagpipes played softly in the background. People who had never even met Rachel showed up. Old classmates. Neighbors. Even children holding small flags. The service was quiet, heavy. No cameras allowed inside. But outside, news trucks waited. Everyone wanted to see how the town would say goodbye to the trooper who vanished in 1985. After the service, a line of patrol cars led the way to the cemetery. One by one, the officers saluted. One by one, flowers were placed at her grave. Rachel's parents stood together. No more wandering. No more silence. Now, she was finally home. 15 years too late, but home. And this time, everyone showed up. At the front of the church, Rachel's mother stood at the podium. Her hands trembled. She clutched a folded piece of paper. It took her a few seconds to start. "I didn't think I'd ever get to do this," she said, her voice soft. She looked out at the crowd, then back at her daughter's casket. "For 15 years, we waited. We hoped, we feared." She paused again, took a breath. "But now, we can finally breathe." People in the room wiped their eyes. "I want you to remember Rachel not just as a trooper, but as a girl who loved her dog, who laughed too loud, who believed in helping people." Her voice broke. She was brave, and she didn't deserve what happened. But today, she gets the goodbye she always deserved. She stepped down, held her husband's arm, and walked back to her seat. It was quiet again, but something felt lighter. 1 week after the funeral, a ceremony was held at the state capitol. Rachel's photo stood on an easel, her in full uniform. Smiling, the governor walked to the podium. He looked at Rachel's parents, then at the officers behind him. "Trooper Rachel Quinn gave her life in service to this state," he said. "And today, we honor her as the hero she always was." He held up a small velvet box. Inside was the State Medal of Honor. It was placed gently in Rachel's mother's hands. She held it tight. The crowd stood and applauded. Later, Rachel's name was etched into the memorial wall outside, alongside other fallen officers. The granite was smooth, the letters clean and deep. A wreath was placed beneath it. Rachel Al Quinn, end of watch. July 14th, 1985. It was a small space dot, but now her story had a place. A name. A legacy. She wasn't just a missing trooper anymore. She was someone remembered, someone honored, someone who mattered. The state finally said what her family had known all along. Rachel was a hero. A few miles outside town, a new sign was raised along the highway. It was simple. White letters on a green background. Trooper Rachel Quinn Memorial Route. Rachel had once driven this road every day on patrol. Now it would carry her name forever. The mayor, town council, and local troopers gathered for the unveiling. Rachel's sister stood beside the sign, hand over her heart. There were no long speeches, just silence. Drivers passed slowly, some tapping their horns in respect. The sign was just a marker. But to Rachel's family, and to the officers who served with her, it meant something more. It meant her story didn't end with a crime. It meant she wouldn't be forgotten. And for the young girls in town who wanted to wear the badge one day, it meant someone came before them, someone brave, someone named Rachel. After the sign was raised, the local news ran a tribute video. It showed pictures of Rachel growing up, riding her bike, blowing out birthday candles, laughing with her sister. Then, the photos stopped. A black screen appeared, and the years passed. Birthdays without her. Graduations without her. Her sister's wedding. Rachel's seat empty in every frame. No toast. No hug. Just silence. Her mom once said, "I always pictured her with a little girl of her own." That little girl never came. Neither did Rachel's badge number passing to a new recruit, or her retirement party, or a simple Sunday dinner with family. 15 years didn't just take her life. It took everything that would have come after. No chance to grow older. No chance to laugh again. Just stolen time. And every photo in that video was a reminder. A reminder that even justice can't turn back the clock. Rachel was gone, and time didn't wait for her. After the funeral and the highway sign, the story went. National TV anchors repeated her name. Rachel Quinn, missing trooper. Found 15 years too late. But the questions started piling up. How did a marked police vehicle, a patrol truck, sit untouched in a junkyard for over a decade? Why did no one notice? Why wasn't the VIN checked? Reporters swarmed the state police department. The governor was asked on live TV, "What else have we missed?" Families of other missing officers came forward. They shared similar stories. Leads ignored, cases growing cold. The story hit hard, because Rachel wasn't a runaway. She wasn't some forgotten name in a stack of files. She was a state trooper. And even she got lost in the system. The headlines grew bolder. How did this happen? What else is out there? Rachel's case exposes a bigger problem. People started looking back at old missing person reports. And suddenly, Rachel's story wasn't just Rachel's anymore. It was a wake-up call, one that echoed far beyond Highway 62. The whole case, the whole story, came down to one man. A junkyard worker named Miguel. He was 43. Quiet, didn't talk much. But that day, something felt off about the truck. He was about to crush it when he saw the corner of a shirt. Deep inside the cab. It wasn't just any shirt. It was a police uniform. Still folded. Still pinned with a name tag. He stopped the machine, called it in. That single moment changed everything. If he hadn't looked again, if he hadn't cared, Rachel would still be a missing person. Just another file in a drawer. Her family would still be waiting by the window. One clue. One worker. That's all it took. Miguel never asked for attention. Never gave interviews. But without him, there'd be no grave. No trial. No answers. He didn't just find a uniform. He gave a family peace. After the cameras left, the town got quiet again. Tommy, the man who killed Rachel, was sentenced to life. No parole. The courtroom emptied. The judge's gavel stopped echoing. But the pain didn't go away. At home, Rachel's mom still kept her daughter's room, just as it was. The bed made. The old jacket still on the hook. Rachel's chair at the dinner table stayed empty. Her dog, now old and gray, still looked at the door sometimes. 15 years later, justice came, but it didn't fill the space she left behind. There were no celebration. No closure. Just a little more peace. And a lot of silence. Her family could sleep now, but they'd never stop missing her laugh, her voice, her smile. Because when someone you love is stolen from you, you don't ever get to be whole again. You just learn how to live around the hole.